on an all-new Babylon 5. The evidence is in.
The Centari Republic is responsible for these attacks.
Everyone's stunned, including Londo.
If something like this were going on, I would know about it.
But Centauri leaders deny it.
He pronounced it the most clever fraud he'd ever seen.
Sheridan takes action.
We are withdrawing from the Alliance.
You cannot just walk away from this.
Any attack is considered an act of war.
Watch an all-new Babylon 5 next Wednesday night at 8 on TNT.
We have transmissions holding.
Patch incoming signal. Full audio and video decode.
Purple files accessed.
What you are about to see has never been shown to anyone outside the Great Council.
Welcome back to Tray 17 of Babylon 5 Podcast, part of the Front Row Network and NPR Illinois Community Voices. This is Blake, back hosting this week. Scott, as you heard with last week's update, is having some health issues right now, and he is out of the hospital and back home. He is resting comfortably and getting better. He was going to try to be on with this recording, but after listening to last week's recording, his doctors decided that he just was not up to the fuckery of dealing with the seven of us again. So he is taking another week to get the strength back up to deal with us and all of our bullshit, and hopefully will be back with us next week. But that is yet to be determined because we still have a lot to discuss with this recording. So I am Blake, and with me is...
Jessi.
Mike.
Nicole.
Justin.
Kevin.
And Emily. And I've decided to become a complete menace.
Yes! We love Menace Emily.
And she says that like that's a new revelation to anyone that's on the podcast.
It means it can get worse.
So we do have another 5-star review this week, but I'm going to hold on that. I'm going to let Scott read that one when he gets back because, frankly, it's a 5-star review, but it also says they don't like Scott that much, and we're just not going to read those reviews right now. We're going to wait for Scott to get back so that Scott may address you personally. I believe we're going to jump right in with a synopsis this evening, and Emily, God help us all, you have our synopsis this week.
Yes, I do. So Garibaldi fucks up and people die. Londo and Beer realize too late that there is much going on in the Centari government that they don't know about, and Sheridan got a bad dye job.
Really?
Yes, his hair looks atrocious. It's not my fault.
It does. Undeniable.
It's true, but just really?
Yes, really. It was worth mentioning.
I thought we were going to go with Sheridan shows extraordinarily bad leadership skills, but a bad dye job is definitely true, too.
Well, I thought the bad leadership skills were kind of a given and didn't feel like they needed to be added in.
I mean, I would have thrown in his 90s robe.
Oh, yeah, we got lots more bedroom time.
And yet again, someone who does not pull off a robe nearly as well as Jakar does. So the way this show typically works before we go completely off the rails is we give our newbies a chance to offer their first impressions of the episode, and then we'll hear from our first ones before jumping into a discussion of all those things that annoy us, make us scratch our heads in wonder, or completely derail the conversation. So let's go ahead and start off this week's first impressions with Justin.
Yeah, this was a good setup episode. It didn't really have a whole lot of meat to it, but it was kind of like, to me, reminded me of the Senate scenes in Phantom Menace. Like, you get a lot of setup backstory, but you don't get, like, a lot of the good shit that we're kind of waiting on. To kick the dead horse one more time, Peter and Andreas are just a national treasure, and those two need to be protected at all costs. Well, at least the one that's still alive. The scene with Jakar and Delenn was extremely touching. I kind of got a little bit of the little old lump in the throat action going on with that. And then, kind of like similar to the scene with Lise and Garibaldi, this scene with Zach and Garibaldi was very difficult to watch and very sad to watch considering what happened to those two actors. I do have to ask a question. How many beds do Sheridan and Delenn have? Because
Two.
Oh, do they? Okay.
They alternate between quarters, so they have a set that's Minbari bed, the elevated.
Okay.
They have Sheridan's quarters.
That's right. I
for
forgot
me,
about that.
I thought they were living in Sheridan's quarters, so I always thought that like, okay, why are they in a Minbari bed, and then now why are they in a regular bed? So that was kind of like, was that bad set production or what? But that makes a whole lot more sense than the crackpot theories that I had. So anyway, back to you, Blake.
Okay. So now that we've addressed how many beds people have, let's go to Nicole.
So this was a pretty packed episode, I thought. A lot of interesting dynamics. I felt like, again, there was multiple storylines going on, but they all kind of played together nicely and moved the story along. I just couldn't get over frickin' Sheridan's robe. It was just cracking me up. It was so 90s. But yeah, the scene between Jakar and Delenn also made me tear up. I wrote that down. It was very emotional. It was very sweet. And it was also a little bit bittersweet and hard to watch knowing that they're both gone too. It was like them saying goodbye to each other in case they don't see each other again. But like the irony of that was not lost on me because I felt like it was almost like a goodbye overall because they're not here anymore. Anyway, I got really emotional with that scene. And then Zach and Garibaldi's scene obviously was good. So when Garibaldi was attacking Zach, and this might be more of a question/statement, but like we found out that Zach was an alcoholic too. Because I don't think that was ever brought up before. I know he had a troubled past, but he never said what it was. And when he was talking to Garibaldi about how I'm your friend, I think it was revealed that he had an alcohol problem too. So
I didn't pick it up as alcohol. I picked it up as he had, whether it was previous maybe drug issues or previous being in trouble with the law or something like that. Just, you're not perfect, so why are you criticizing me for my choices? I kind of picked it up as more drug issues maybe than anything else.
Yeah, because there was a line where he said, I know exactly how you feel or something like that. So anyway, I thought that was interesting, and I thought it was revealing about Zach's character's history because all we really know is that he had some issues, but we don't know a lot about him. So that was kind of interesting, that dynamic, and that was also a hard scene too because, again, they're both gone as well. This episode, for some reason, just really played on my emotions. And I didn't expect that because I thought I was going to kind of be like, this is boring. But yeah, overall, that minister guy on Centari, he's an asshole and his stupid hair. I don't like him. I will say, I thought it was interesting that Jakar was like, where I go, he goes. And then Londo was like, well, where he goes, I go. I didn't expect that for them to both get thrown in the jail. So that was interesting. It really showed the dynamic between them. I thought was awesome. And then overall, Franklin got to kick some ass. So that was cool. We know he liked that. And yeah, it was really a packed episode. Like there was a lot of stuff. We got to see Sheridan go off and yell at people. Garibaldi fucked up. I feel like there was so much that happened, but I also feel like nothing happened at the same time. I know that sounds really weird. So anyway, I have a lot of thoughts. We'll get in.
And how about Emily?
It actually wasn't a terrible episode. I did not appreciate Jakar and Delenn trying to make me have feelings. I don't enjoy having feelings. They're unpleasant. Man, Londo and Veer. The whole Londo, Veer, and then like Londo and Jakar arc, I feel like that's actually the best storyline at this point. And seriously, why did they do that to Sheridan's hair? He looks like a bigger douche than before. And I actually assumed the whole Garibaldi and Zach thing. I assumed Zach was saying he was also an alcoholic. That's how I took it. I took it as like, yeah, I've been down this road and you're going down it again and not to do it. And I was surprised. I'm wondering if he actually told Sheridan when he came to give Sheridan the message about what was going on, if he said Garibaldi missed it. Oh, no, he couldn't have because Garibaldi tried to cover his ass on that. I think Zach needs to rat him out on this.
And how about Jessi?
I actually really liked this episode. I had a good time. It was a one nap episode. I will tell you, I took a nap in the middle about 30 minutes in. I am finding that season 5, I am unable to make it through episodes without taking a nap and starting over. But I did pick it back up and I did actually very much enjoy the first half. Then I enjoyed my nap and then I enjoyed the last half. The robes in this episode really cracked me up because I giggle when somebody like knocks on the door real late and they're like waking them up and let me put a robe on. Bitch, you get what you get. If you're going to come to my house at fucking in the middle of the night and wake me up, you get what you get. Like if I'm naked, I might cover something, but you get what you get. You're not getting a robe. You're not getting a robe and house shoes and all these cute little things. There were a lot of moments in this whole episode that pissed me off, and my fucking beef with Garibaldi and his alcohol. And I actually have predictions today, so I'm going to wait for that. But we're so freaking close to the end, and it's just heating up again. So I don't know. My new thing, though, is going to be, you want a fucking war? You got a motherfucking war, bitch. I'm going to yell that whenever I can. But other than that, yeah, I actually really enjoyed this one.
And then I'm thinking Jessi just said she may answer the door naked to a podcast full of people that actually do have her address.
I said I'll cover something. Like, listen, I'm not going to traumatize you, but you're not going to fucking robe, okay? You get what you get. And if you're going to be bitchy about it, you can fucking leave and come back in the morning when I'm fully dressed and done.
So in other words, it's an adventure to be a house guest at Jessi's?
Absolutely. Listen, never a fucking boring moment in the snake milker's home.
Naked roulette.
So let's switch over to our first ones now and get their first impressions of the episode. And let's start with Mike.
I'm guessing Papa John's has blocked Jessi's number.
I am forever grateful for the drop it at the front door button that they have.
Because that's what you do? Where were we? Episodes and things. You know, I'm really conflicted about this one, and I can only say that I actually fully agree and understand what Nicole is saying, because when I finished this episode, my initial thought about it was, boy, this was kind of a snoozer, not a whole lot happened, and then mentally I have to go back and replay, like, all of the kind of really big shit got kicked off in this episode. I can't rectify it in my brain. There's a weird incongruity about it, because I still think, like, overall, not a lot of actual, like, action and set pieces move around, but a lot of doors get kicked open and a lot of dynamics suddenly shift in this one. And there are some really excellent character moments. Maybe that's the deal, is the highlight of the episode is some of the character moments between G'Kar and Delenn and G'Kar and Londo and Veer, Franklin and Veer, really overshadow a lot of what else is happening in the episode and setting up the kind of war to come dynamics of what's going on. And, you know, we'll talk about it more as we get there, but quite frankly, I feel like I'm pretty well over just not personally interested in the whole Garibaldi alcohol storyline. But the scene with him and Zach was really great, and I almost wished that a longer storyline but of the drama between those two and the impossible position that Zach is in. I wish there was more of that, because I feel like it was justified in what's going on here. And we'll talk more about this when we get into the set pieces or whatever of the episode. You know, overall, I think my takeaway on this one is that it is actually a very solid episode. It's well worth the higher rate it gets.
And Kevin, before we have you jump in, I have to say we had a couple of our listeners/viewers in the YouTube Live when we premiered last week's episode, and they weren't sure if they were the crazy ones or you were the crazy one, because nobody else heard a cricket. So there are some fans out there questioning your sanity at this point.
How could you not hear it? I heard it, and I'm not fucking crazy. I'm a bitch, but I'm not crazy. And I fucking listen. Every time Kevin talked, I heard it. Now, whether it was an actual cricket or it was a mechanical cricket, I don't know, but I heard the noise.
It did not come through on the audio at all.
I heard it listening to the freaking recording. You guys, listen, I'm not crazy. You might think I am, but I'm not. And I'm...
Hold on. What the hell is a mechanical cricket?
They make these little...
So we were making a joke because Justin had been here earlier that day, and so the joke was that he planted a mechanical cricket to drive me insane.
Oh, okay. I thought the not crazy person was going to talk about, like, government listening crickets or something.
Listen,
well, we may have that later in our
newer
the only other person
to have heard the cricket was the crazy government conspiracy person.
Emily is 100% right. You fuckers are gaslighting me, and I don't appreciate it.
I didn't say that.
That's me.
Well, I'm not, because
I'm sorry. It was Nicole.
Was chirping probably 5 feet from my ear, but...
Do you know why none of us heard the cricket? Because we weren't listening to Kevin.
Oh,
wow!
Damn!
Wow!
There's that.
Shots fired.
Shots fired, baby.
See, Kevin, I do like you, and you fuckers don't. So maybe next time you're going to gaslight me, you shouldn't, because I'm one of your fans.
I didn't gaslight
Are you his only fan?
I was like the one who didn't, but whatever.
Please, he's like, I heard the
You are on my shit list, madam. I've never been on yours, but you're on mine.
Okay, add it. Put it in make sure you highlight it and come hang out with me. We can talk about it face to face.
Just be careful when you knock on the door.
They'll distract the whole fight.
Do you have any of those eclipse glasses?
So, Kevin, how about your first impressions on the episode now that we've discussed cricket that may or may not have been there?
So I gotta say, I'm firmly in the Cole category with this. I think there's a ton going on in this episode. There's Londo not even entertaining the fact that there could be something going on that he doesn't know about, and he's just turning into old Londo right before our eyes, defending the Centari Republic. There's Sheridan with his terrible leadership skills. There's a very moving speech at the end by Delenn about how many candles will go out tonight, and it really made me think of Gaza and Ukraine and even Russia now, among other places in the world. And then there's the Garibaldi storyline, which I was not looking forward to. And then as this episode was unfolding, and that great scene between Doyle and Conway, who had a very close personal relationship themselves and were both dealing with addiction at the time they did this scene, and they're both gone from addiction, is really powerful. And I hate to make this personal, but because I've lost a family member from addiction, that gets to be a very troubling area for me. I usually get kind of worked up about it, but it definitely is an incredibly honest way of writing addiction. And I'm glad that JMS doesn't pull that punch in this episode, because it's incredibly powerful. It's put out there for everyone to see, and it's not something that he shies away from in any way, shape, or form, especially when it was well known that both of these actors were dealing with addiction problems of some form at this point in time or in the past. And the stuff with Peter and Andreas is great. The scene with Mira and Andreas is fantastic. This is a packed episode. And as Mike pointed out, it kicks a lot of doors open that you really wonder where it's going to go between now and the end of the season, which unfortunately is the end of the series. But it definitely is something that I'm hoping I will enjoy more talking about than my last rewatch.
So I agree with a lot of what's been said. I really enjoy this episode. I think this episode has some really great scenes in it with this cast, proving just how phenomenal they are at what they do and their ability to pull off some of these scenes. We've got everything we've talked about before. You've got Jakar moments in this. You've got Londo moments in here. You've got that bit with Zach and Garibaldi where they're having that conversation. And as Kevin put, it's absolutely right. You've got these two actors who have both struggled with addiction and both had these issues, and they're acting that scene together. And I think that's what made it so impactful as a scene. One, us knowing their histories, but their ability to put that into the performance as well. The one thing I did think, I don't so much know if we saw the coming back of the old Londo or not. I thought there was a moment there you could see it's like he didn't necessarily believe what his own government was telling him, but he had to present the party line anyway. And I took it that's how he kind of interacted, and that's why he was going home to figure out what the hell was going on. I'm sure he still thought it was possible that it was someone pulling shenanigans, but he wasn't entirely sold, I don't think, that it's not issues going on in his own government. Because he's even seen the caginess of trying to get in to see the regent and all the different secrets that are being kept that we've seen so far with his interactions with the government for Centari. But overall, a really good episode. Like Mike said, it kicks in a lot of doors. It gets a lot of things open to see where things go for the next handful of episodes as we head towards the finale. Kevin.
The other thing I want to mention about this episode is that the director, and I'm terribly sorry if I don't pronounce the name correctly, but it's Goran Gazic, I think is how it's pronounced. That's Mira Furlan's husband, and they both fled from Yugoslavia during the revolution. And he was a director in Yugoslavia. They had done projects together, one very prominent project. He was known for doing silly slapstick comedy. And he, of course, was trying to break into the industry here in the U.S., and with less success than Mira had. and really wanted to have this as something that would be on his resume so that it would show that he has the ability to do things outside of just silly slapstick comedy. And they had been lobbying for him for a while to do an episode, and PTN was like, no, hell no, he's never done sci-fi before. This is just a charity case and other really hurtful stuff. But then when they took it to TNT was like, yeah, that sounds really good. Go ahead and do that. Because they knew he had plenty of support if anything were to go wrong, which it didn't. And Mira had no problem working with her husband because they had done it before. So I think it's really great that there's some great Delenn pieces in this episode, and that it's directed by her husband, and it was personal for them, because some of this writing from JMS, especially at the end, talking about the sanctity of life, candles going out, was very personal for both of them, because they had lost family and friends in the revolution, and they fled from it because it was so violent. And we're trying to make it here in the U.S. Very, very powerful.
I think that's interesting. I knew he was Mira's husband. I didn't know his background about directing comedy and slapstick, and almost makes me wonder what could have happened had they given him the Rebo and Zudi episode.
Right.
Justin.
Well, and I just want to ask one question before I forgot. Was it Mira, a famous stage actress over in Croatia or something like that? Mm-hmm. That explains why she expresses her emotions so well. Yeah.
Stage and screen, but yeah, definitely a very prominent actress in Yugoslavia, and they felt like they really had to get away from how violent things were in the late 80s, early 90s, so they fled over here.
Yeah, somebody told me she took a lot of crap from people back home, too, for leaving.
Mm-hmm. She did.
So how about we get started with the Zach and Garibaldi scene and talk about that a little bit. As we've mentioned before, there are members of this podcast who have lost folks to addiction. We know there are others out there in our listener community who have themselves struggled with this or lost individuals. So this is never an easy conversation. And please know that even we, as much as we derail and comment on things, this is a topic we take very seriously on this show as well. So, Jessi, you want to offer some thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I do want to just comment on what you just said real quick. We do tend to joke around and play around a lot, and I felt it a lot with Scott, the things that are going on with Scott. I didn't want anybody to think that we weren't taking what was going on with Scott seriously. And just like this situation, we do not, I'm not going to speak for everybody, I'll speak for myself. I do not play about addiction. Like Blake said, it runs deep in my roots, and I take it very seriously. So this definitely was one of the more pissed off moments in the episode that I had. I'm mad at Zach because he didn't say anything. Now, I have gone through stages in my life where I've had the don't snitch mentality. You don't tell on your friends. You don't do this. You don't do that. But with growing older and growing and maturing, I've realized that sometimes people need to be saved, and that requires you to stand up and speak when you don't want to. And in this case, potentially lives could have been saved if he would have said something about it. So I was mad at Zach because he just said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go sober you up and we're going to move on, like as if it's not going to happen again in 12 hours. And it did, and I hoped that it wasn't going to, and it pissed me off when it did. And as the message was coming through and Garibaldi was drunk and asleep, I am literally like, fuck you, Garibaldi. Like, you cost them multiple lives, multiple casualties, because you couldn't stand up when you were confronted with it and say, yep, I've got a problem. Now that's addict behavior. And addict behavior is addict behavior. But at the same time, it's still okay to be a sober support system and be mad at the people that are doing these things. It's hard for it. A lot of the times people are like, well, you're not allowed to blah, blah. No, I can feel and be however I want to. After supporting somebody for so long and them continuing to go back to the same behavior, eventually you do what you got to do to keep yourself sane. So just a bit of advice to anybody out there that is struggling with it. Don't be too hard on yourself. Talk to somebody that you can. And if you're sober and have been sober for a long time, keep going and don't stop. And I'm not trying to like motivationally speak anybody, but that's exactly what I heard in this episode was, if you do find sobriety, find everything in your soul that can make you continue to strive for that goal that you had at least one.
Kevin.
I couldn't say it better than what Jessi did, so I won't try, but it's really sobering to see a scene like this written for two actors that were dealing with major addiction problems in different ways, and we ended up losing both of them from addiction problems. And I hate to pick on one of them, but I'm going to have to, because I saw a lot of quotes from Jerry Doyle about this episode where he was like, well, I can't really speak from the alcoholism part, but I was trying to quit cigarettes at this point. And so he goes on about a lot of, I was trying to quit cigarettes. And so that's how I played it in this episode. It's like, man, he was had his head in the sand, just could not understand where he was and how his actions were affecting other people and himself. It's just so sad. But from a writing perspective, if Zach had done the perfect thing, he would have said, you have two options. I'm going to turn you in, or you can take a leave of absence. That was the way to save his reputation, but by giving him the choice that was either choice taking him out of the situation, because he had no business running a major department of the fledgling New Alliance. And it's just heartbreaking that it ended up this way. But I think it's pretty clear, and I don't mean this to be an apologist, because it's not an excuse, but there's no way this wouldn't have ended up in war, and eventually something would have happened that would have been the powder keg. But it didn't have to be this incident, it didn't have to be this early, and it didn't have to be these people that died. So it's heartbreaking that it happened and that it's Garibaldi's fault. And Zach, I don't know what kind of fault he'll ascribe to his own actions from it. We'll have to see if they even go into that. But it is heartbreaking to see that scene and know the behind the scenes that's even more heartbreaking.
Nicole.
So Kevin kind of touched on it, but for me, yeah, this scene with Zach and Garibaldi, I thought was really heartbreaking because it was kind of like foreshadowing in a way. We didn't know it then if you watched it, but now knowing what we know, it's like it's foreshadowing in a way, really. And that's really a hard pill to swallow, knowing what they both went through in real life and watching the dynamic between them two. When Zach put the gun on the table and was like, if you want to hurt me, just shoot me and make it quick. That was like the way that he reacted to Garibaldi attacking him was so like level-headed and just calm and like, here, just fucking do it. Just end me. Just do it. Because I can tell you right now, if someone talked to me that way, I would have knocked them out before they could finish their fucking sentence. Okay? Their teeth would have been across the room. But the way that he handled it, he kind of de-escalated the situation in a way, okay? Like, because he came in there and Garibaldi came in hot and he was just yelling, oh, everything's important, blah, blah, blah. You have no idea. And once Zach called him out, he got aggressive and he got mean. And then when Zach put the gun on the table and was like, if you want to hurt me, just shoot me because it'll make it quicker. Just get it over with. And then Garibaldi kind of changed his tune a little bit. Like he was still making excuses and he was still kind of being a jerk, but like not attacking Zach anymore. And I thought that was really great, like a de-escalation tactic. And it was a really great example of like, he said, listen, I've been where you are. I know that. So I really feel like he might have been an alcoholic too in his I mean, we know he was in real life, but like on the show, we don't know his history. So I feel like coming from someone who understands and knows what you're going through, I felt like it was even more poignant the way that he reacted and the way that he was like, I'm calling you out because I'm your friend and I care about you. And knowing that they were actual friends in real life too is also makes it harder to kind of digest this scene in the episode, because the thing is like when you're on a sober journey, from what I'm told, I don't know, but I have friends that are and have been on one. It's so hard sometimes when you're the only person going through it, that if you have like a friend or a buddy, I mean, that's why they have sponsors and like AA and stuff, right? Having that like almost like accountability or like that person that understands, like, this is going to get deep and a little dark for a second here, but like my mom died 5 years ago. And when I talk to people about it, unless you've lost a parent, you don't understand. And it's almost in a way comforting, which is kind of fucked up because I know that I'm not alone and somebody else understands my pain. So I would rather talk to this person who understands than somebody who has no fucking clue what it feels like to go through that. Not saying loss isn't loss, but it's different. Like, I don't know what it's like to lose a child, and I would never want that. But somebody who's lost a child wouldn't necessarily want to relate to me. So I feel like them having that bond and that moment and having that connection with each other, I feel like Zach knew exactly how to handle it, and he knew how to kind of get him under control. Now, I do think Zach should turn him in, especially after what happened. I'm not making an excuse for him. I can see why he didn't jump the shark and do that right away, because he wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's done it before. He's got sober. He's been sober for a long time. He knows he has the ability to do it, and he can do it. So I think in Zach's eyes, he thought it might be more aggressive to turn him in, and as opposed to give him a chance to kind of get it under control. So I feel like Zach was in between a rock and a hard place in this situation.
Kevin,
I just want to give some quick perspective from a character standpoint. So yes, Zach had dealt with addiction. They don't go into a lot of detail with it, but that's definitely the case. And there was some sort of incident in their past with Zach and with Garibaldi that bonded the two of them. They don't really go into a lot of detail in it, especially in the series. But there is definitely some sort of incident that the two bonded over and had a major trust between the two of them. And knowing that the two actors had kind of a bond, they really got along well and didn't have issues, during the series, is an interesting aspect. But I just thought it was worth talking about the fact that Zach definitely had addiction issues.
Emily.
Oh, I'm not pile on to what everyone has said because they've all made really good points. I think one of the things that frustrated me about this scene was that Franklin was seeing signs of Garibaldi relapsing a few episodes back. And where is Franklin now? Like, is Franklin checking up on him at all? Or did he just trust Garibaldi with his bullshit? And then we have Sheridan, and there have been other instances of Garibaldi not being the reliable Garibaldi that he has been. Like, the signs are there that something's going wrong. And it seems like, again, Sheridan is not paying attention. I know there's a lot going on B5, but this is your security person. And if they're showing signs they are not the same responsible security person they used to be, you need to stay on top of that because shit will go wrong, as we have seen. And I guess going forward for the few episodes we have left in this season, is anyone else going to try to help Garibaldi, or is it going to be left to Zach to be like, you know what, Garibaldi slipped again? Is the responsibility for someone noticing all going to fall on Zach now? Because that doesn't feel fair.
Well, I think part of it, too, with Franklin confronting him, it was definitely, I think Franklin's too naive, in a way, to be the one to confront Garibaldi. Yes, Franklin went through his addiction with the stems, but Franklin went on a walk around the station, found himself, and was fine, and all's better now. I don't think Franklin truly gets what addiction is, especially on a relapse basis.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think I would fault Franklin. I just don't think Franklin understands what he's dealing with in this particular scenario. Jessi.
So I think that Zach did a phenomenal job in this episode keeping his cool. Like Nicole said, if somebody had talked to me like that, I've gotten much better about being the Zach in this episode when people are losing their shit on me, because addicts are going to do that. They're going to blame everybody but themselves. And they get real defensive and they're going to lash out. That's what happens. But Zach did his very best, turning it back on Garibaldi and being like, this isn't about me. This is about you. And he did something that I do on a regular basis where it's not the same thing as me sitting a gun on the table and being like, just shoot me because it would hurt less. I would just prefer you not to talk to me if you're not going to tell me the truth. Like, I would just prefer you not to say anything over lying straight to my face. And it tends to work. Most people stop talking because they don't want to continue to lie to somebody that they actually give a shit about their opinion or the way that they feel about somebody. but it's definitely, it was a very real scene. Like, it was so real. It was so raw. And so, I said earlier, I would have liked to have seen Zach say something to somebody, and that's hindsight, right? 2020. We didn't know at that time that it was going to lead to what it led to. You can't know that. You can't predict it. But I'm going to tell you right now, I will 100% hold Zach accountable if he does not say anything now. Like, now he needs to go and speak to somebody about what's going on. And then I don't know who it was that was talking about, Nicole said that somebody giving me their opinion about their parent dying without a parent dying means very little to me. And it would be like me. I have both of my parents. I can't tell Nicole what it's like to have my mom die, because I still have my mom, and I'm not going to offer her my 2 cents because it just doesn't feel real to me. So that's why when I'm talking to somebody that has addiction issues, I lead with, listen, I don't know what it's like to be you. I can never know what it's like to be you, but I can stand on the outside in, looking in and see kind of the big picture that you may not be able to see. But that's why people with addiction make such phenomenal counselors. People who have been addicts before make the best substance abuse counselors that I've ever worked with in my whole life. Almost to the point where if you don't have any addiction issues, I kind of judge you about your ability to be a good counselor. So it's definitely, this scene was a lot. And it was just, and what killed me, it was one of 5 things that happened in this episode. So it was pretty crazy episode, really.
Nicole?
I did have one thing I wanted to point out about that very end of the scene when Zach was like, all right, let's go get you some oxy pills and go get your life together. Like oxycodone, like the oxy we think of, or is it like a caffeine pill on B5?
It's because they've talked about it before. They mentioned it back in the very first season episode where there is the episode where the assassination attempt on the president coming to B5 and Garibaldi got drunk. They referenced them then. They're like an oxygen pill that basically sobers you up. That's what they were referring to within the B5 universe, which all I have to say is, God, those would have been nice in grad school.
Yeah, instant hangover and drunk cure. Sign me up.
Yeah, I think coffee and a shot of B1 and I don't know what other magic pill
I've always found a Lunchable to be pretty helpful.
Well, and my hangover cure is usually McDonald's morning breakfast, something greasy.
Yeah, pretty much. That's why the day after Galvin's wedding, it was over easy eggs, corned beef hash, and buttery toast because it was the grease that was needed.
Hair of the dog, baby. Hair of the dog.
Mike.
Okay, well, yeah, I don't know, man. I think I kind of alluded to the fact that I had a lot of heavy thoughts to add to this, and you all have knocked it out of the park and said more than I could ever say adequately here. I will just double down on the fact that I agree with what everyone said, and I think that Jeff Conway is really superb in this show, and they somewhere along the way recognized that and promoted him from a background character to somebody who was in the credits. He's gotten a lot more screen time and a lot to chew on, and this scene really, really highlighted to me the fact that I wish we had gotten more Zach. And I really think that this particular storyline, while not necessarily the most interesting to me, because if you've been following the podcast up until this point, I'm here for space mystery stuff, not so much the drama, but it's just so good. It's such a perfectly tied little story plot knot, putting Zach in this impossible position to confront and have to trust his friend, help him try to find redemption in himself, whatever you want to call it, or having to rat him out and be the guy. And I do think that, I'll just say that, that Zach, for better or worse, as a character, I think he didn't handle this correctly. I think the scene where he confronted Garibaldi was perfect, but I think along with taking Garibaldi to get sobered up and report to Sheridan, it should have come with an ultimatum that said, you need to go tell Sheridan what the fuck is happening, or I'm going, because the stakes are just too high. And I think as his friend, that was all that he was really owed, that all the Garibaldi was. One other thought that I had was, I'm not going to try to find the particular episode title, but in earlier seasons when we had the Night Watch plot line and the big uprising of Night Watch officers trying to overthrow the station, it kind of was revealed at that point that a good number, when Garibaldi confronted the security forces, he showed that he knew a lot of them personally, and that he knew that a lot of those guys had skeletons in their closet, that he was, just like Zach, he was bringing them in because he knew what they had been through, and he was giving them another chance the same way that Sinclair knew what Garibaldi had been through, that Sinclair gave Garibaldi a chance. So I guess I just do want to highlight the fact that Zach handled that situation with Garibaldi expertly, because, pointed out, he's been there, and I think he knows who he's dealing with. I think there's a lot of similar situations among a lot of the security staff on B5, and Zach has probably given that same speech to other people too.
Okay, I think we've been through a lot of the discussion on this particular scene. Nicole, you have one last comment you want to make on it, and then we'll move on to some of the rest of the episode.
Yep. 2 comments. 1, damn, I miss Sinclair. And then 2, I can't wait to read JMS's book, because I want to know where and how this man comes up with these amazing scenes and stories and things that he writes, because damn, he's had to have gone through it. So I can't wait to read his fucking book.
What we can tell you from his book, this is a person who grew up around addiction. This is a person who grew up with quite literal Nazis in his family and had experiences throughout his life of dealing with poverty, dealing with being part of a religious community, being jumped and assaulted. I mean, this is someone who throughout his life has had all of these experiences, and even beyond B5 is someone who is a fan of JMS's other works as well. This is not the only show he does this, but JMS's experiences come out for sure in his writing, and it's a great area to go into. So I highly recommend the book once we're through.
The other thing about JMS is he moved around a ton, so he never spent a lot of time in one place, and he didn't have a lot of attachments to people growing up, and that included family. Not very many. And so when you see times in his writing where there's a longing for attachment, when there's trouble between people, like, that's all coming from personal experience. But I cannot, and I'm sure anyone who's read it would say the same, I can't recommend his autobiography.
Emily, you taking us in a new direction?
I was just going to plug his book, The Glass Box, because it is incredibly well written and maybe some solid advice for things we should be on the lookout for.
It was amazing. I loved it.
Yeah, definitely a good read. And honestly, I feel like that showed his writing skills so much better than B5 was able to.
Well, and some other stuff to check out also for him for writing. The Changeling, Sense8. There's all kinds of stuff that he has done writing in and around, in addition to comic books and other things, that he has a vast array of writing, both film and non-film.
Yeah, I think
No, go ahead, Emily, sorry.
I think some of my challenges with B5 have mostly been due to budget limitations and just the decade in which it was created, because there are certain quirks of 90s stuff that are frustrating 30 years later.
It is definitely a product of 90s sci. So how about we jump into the main plot line of this and start with the very beginning of this and talk about the laying out of evidence against the Centari and into Londo going to Centari. And who wants to kick us off with that discussion?
I'll talk about how I called it. He had no idea. And I really don't think that he had any idea. I mean, if he did, he's playing it off really well, but he's definitely doing the things that he needs to do to take himself in the position that he's about to, the actual regent as the prime minister. Now, I think he's definitely taking himself in a direction where he needs to start calling the shots, and he's trying. But
Emily,
I thought it was interesting how he was secluded while the evidence was being presented, and then Jakar comes in and he's like, okay, what are you bringing me? He's like, nothing. And he seemed really surprised by that. And Jakar's like, I wasn't there to rat you out or share information. I was there to protect you, which is a really interesting arc compared to where we started with those two. But I'm kind of wondering, is that like a normal type of procedure? Like, hey, we're going to present all this evidence and you're not going to be in the room until the evidence that's new to everybody. That seemed odd to me, unless it was just their way of trying to keep him from interrupting, being a blowhard like he likes to do.
Well, it had a great effect that it continues to show Londo's isolation throughout this storyline, and especially in this episode, because it culminates in him being in a cell with just Jakar, but it starts out, it's just him and Veer, and I don't know how much time he and Veer were spending outside of council chambers and whatnot, but he just continues to be more and more isolated throughout the entire episode, to the point where it ends with him and Jakar in his quarters and Jakar in the hallway, and he's wondering, okay, are you going to stab me in the back now too? And Jakar's like, no, I have nothing to add to this. I'm just here to tell you that they're ready to see you. And I thought that was a really cool writing technique, that it showed Londo's progression, that he's just completely isolated by the end of this end of the episode.
I think that's why I struggle with it, because it's more of a symbol type thing as opposed to a functional type thing. My ability to suspend disbelief struggles with certain things.
Nicole?
So, yeah, I thought it was really interesting the way that it was portrayed, and then he was brought in there and they basically read him the charges or whatever, and he was like, absolutely not. But watching his face, watch that video, he looked horrified. So I definitely agree that he didn't know what was going on. What I thought was really interesting is that he was like, I'm going to go to Centari, try to figure out what's going on. Veer didn't really want him to go. And what I really thought was kind of fucked up was that guy on Centari Prime. What's the minister? I don't know what his name is, the dickhead.
Oh, creepy smiley dude?
Yeah. So he was literally blocking everyone. He was blocking Londo from the Regent. He was blocking Veer from Londo. Like, he's really the culprit here on Centari of, like, evil, and, like, he's the one who's causing all the fucking problems. And it really was, like, infuriating to watch him just be a total dickhead like that. And then I also thought it was cool that Franklin came to help Veer, because he knew once this got out that Veer was going to be in danger. So they wanted to move him and put him somewhere safe. And sure enough, they got circled up by these guys. And I really thought it was awesome that Franklin just kicked their asses. Like, and knowing that he liked to do those kind of scenes and liked to do the fight scenes and the stunts, I was like, yeah, get him. I was like really into it. So that was fun. But it was just interesting because, like Kevin said, or was it whoever just said that the isolating thing? Was that you, Kevin?
It's me, yeah.
Yeah, okay. It's funny because you see Londo getting isolated, but then Veer getting help. So there's such a juxtaposition between the way people look at Londo and the way people look at Veer, I think. But I will say it's very commendable that Jakar still found it upon himself to go with Londo and protect him. And then the fact that Londo, it's like they had each other's backs in a way that I would have never guessed. So from start to finish, it was really interesting because, yeah, it's like you pointed out that he was getting isolated, but like the way that Veer was kind of ushered to safety, that one guy was wreaking havoc and wreaking hell. It was just a lot of like Centari fuckery. And man, I can't wait for that smiley, creepy guy to get got.
Mike?
Yeah, I will second that. I don't really know if I agree with the way that the proceedings were handled here from a functional real life standpoint of having Londo secluded during the reading of the charges. I kind of get it and I kind of don't. I have almost a bigger problem with some of the other aspects in this. Like I have to believe that it was really clever writing that in previous episodes the minister got ahead of things and contacted Londo and kind of already planted the seed with like, hey, they're gonna try and fuck us over and you need to be ready for it. Because that plants that seed of doubt in Londo's mind already to kind of prepare him to come in and have to swing hard for Centari. And so he reads the charges and he rightly identifies a number of the charges or pieces of evidence as being circumstantial. I have to believe that Londo does not believe that super far-fetched setup story that he was given by the minister. And I wish they had kind of leaned into that a little bit more, because it kind of makes it feel like they completely forgot about the episode where Londo and Jakar went to Centari Prime and like were confronted by telekinetic aliens that they'd never seen before. they kind of just glanced right past that whole thing like it never happened, while at the same time going back and referencing that episode again in other ways, in other less important ways. But all that said, I absolutely don't think that Londo slid back into his old Londo ways necessarily. I think he was given the viewpoint by the minister. I think he walked out to defend Centauri in front of the council the way that a good Centauri patriot would do. And then we saw the truth come out, and we saw the truth in his own feelings come out when he's confronted with evidence that goes against what the minister, evidence that he himself can't ignore. And the fact that he then basically goes silent, drops everything, and says, I got to get the hell out of here and go home and figure out what's happening. I think that's the part that's really telling he's at in this whole episode. But yeah, like I said, my biggest gripe is just that it does feel like it glosses over a very, very, very important piece of a previous episode.
Justin.
No, you're 100% correct in the fact that he's not exactly old Londo in this particular scene, but to me, I feel like he's going to have to become old school Londo going forward, because he's gonna have to get to the bottom of this shit. And even Jakar said he's relentless. He's going to figure out what the fuck's going on. If there is anything shitty going on, he's the person that's going to put a stop to it. And the one thing that I was going to say about Londo and Jakar, and the fact that Londo was willing to, at what point previously in this series would we have ever thought Londo would willingly get himself locked up in order to defend Jakar? Never, right? So the fact that now he is willing to get himself locked up, the fact that now he is willing to put himself right next to who used to be his biggest adversary, and honestly, I think right now is his best friend, his only friend in the universe. So to me, it's watching the way that those two sacrifice for each other in this episode was really phenomenal to watch. And the fact that Londo is perfectly happy to sit there in a cell next to Jakar and figure things out. Even their play back and forth where when they first get locked up and you hear the door slam, and Londo's just sitting there looking at Jakar, and Jakar's like, what? I didn't say anything. Like, it's a perfect friendship. It's the most unlikely friendship, and I fucking love it. I can't wait to see where it goes from here.
Kevin.
Mike, do you want to go first? I've got a question for the crew.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind. I was just going to say, the thing about the whole relationship between Londo and Jakar, I don't think Jakar is necessarily Londo's only friend, because there's Veer at this point, and they definitely have a different relationship. I think Veer is almost more like a younger brother or a son or something than a
I can see that, yeah.
A direct one-on-one
right.
friend.
Yeah.
But I will say, just kind of thinking about that, the thing that this episode really makes me wish we got more of was Veer and Jakar together.
Okay.
Good. You have a question.
I do. So my question is this. They are virtually sure Londo has no knowledge of or involvement in what is going on. And yet they completely exclude him from any discussion of how this is going to go, and even exclude him from the council chambers to hear the evidence. They only let him read it, which from a writing perspective, I get why JMS did it and why it seems a little problematic from Mike and Emily in particular who have mentioned that. But here's my question. Did Sheridan and Delenn and Jakar, especially the three of them, do him dirty? Or was this the only way of doing it because they knew Londo would react this way? So did they have a choice, or was this the only way of doing it?
I don't think they had a choice because Londo was an unintentional leak. So I feel like even if they understood he was not a part of it, or he was unintentionally causing problems by having access to certain, so they had to block him out to protect him.
But at the same time, it feels like a real missed opportunity if they were that confident that Londo was a good guy in all of this, that they could have used him. They could have brought him in, told him what was up, shown him the evidence privately ahead of time, and then leaked false information through Londo.
Yeah, I feel like that's what he would have gone with. And given Delenn has a fairly decent relationship with him, and Jakar has a great relationship with him now. So it is interesting that they would default like a hostile relationship given everything they've all been through together.
Yeah, and I think there was a certain level of showmanship maybe that was required in order to keep the alliance together. I think the rest of the members of the alliance were going to need to see the same evidence, and they were going to need to have a pound of flesh, and they couldn't all be brought into the same plot, or it wouldn't have stayed a secret. I do ultimately still think that they kind of did Londo dirty. They really could have handled him personally in a much different, better, smarter way.
Yeah, which really leads into what I'm going to say about Sheridan with showing some bad leadership skills, which I don't want to go into yet, but that definitely goes along with it. I feel like this has a very strong argument for doing Londo dirty. The only reason I said that I felt like it seemed like old Londo is because even though it seems like he's going to do some things behind the scenes to find out what's going on, when the lights are on and he's in the council chamber, he looked like old Londo to me, and that's the only reason I said it.
Jessi.
Let us never forget the first 3 seasons and who Londo was. So I understand that we've had most of a season 5 where Londo is like fun and loving, and we all love the Londo that we loved the very first part of the season, but we had an entire season full of responses to his behaviors. Not the entire, but a giant part of it was because he started a fucking war because he's a douchebag of a person. So listen, I love fun Londo, and I love his character, and I love Peter, and I love him as a person, but his character is shady as fuck, and he was shady as fuck in the beginning of the actual show, and it's hard for me to be like, yeah, we should have just told him because he would have acted totally appropriately. Because I'm going to tell you right now, somebody came to me and said, hey, your whole family is over here giving away secrets and killing innocent people. I can't promise you that I wouldn't be like, hey, so I would be like, hey, assholes, I don't know what's happening, but it needs to stop right now. And I don't know if I could my composure and my cool in order to play the part. So I can understand why they didn't tell him, but I can also see the point of maybe they should have tried. But you never know what Londo you're gonna get. Like we have multiple episodes left where he could just come out swinging and be the terrible Londo that he was for all of season 3 and 4. So I don't know. It's hard to play that we should have game.
Mike.
Yeah, and not to like belabor this point, but as I'm thinking about it more, I really think it's a huge gap in the writing in this whole kind of season and plot thread that they've not talked more about. The mysterious telekinetic bug-eyed aliens that Jakar and Londo encountered on Centari Prime. And I'm thinking about this because, to our knowledge, right, I don't believe Londo has, never mentioned it as though he was at all concerned what the hell that was about or what they were doing in the palace. And B, I don't think he also ever told the rest of the council himself. I think Jakar went and told Sheridan and Delenn about it. And frankly, they all have also apparently just forgotten and don't seem very concerned. Like, oh, the Centari are the ones behind it. I wonder if the weird telekinetic bug aliens had something to do with it. It's just like completely been erased from everyone's memory, which is just weird.
Kevin.
Yeah, I just quickly want to reiterate the point that I'm not sure how I fall on my question, but I know that it's true that you don't know what kind of Londo you're going to get. You had 3 years of him being quote unquote old Londo. You've had not that much screen time of him being new Londo. And so I could see them being like, well, we don't know which Londo we're going to get. And so we pretty much have to do it this way.
And just to go back to the comment Mike made about knowing about what was going on Centari Prime and why doesn't Sheridan warn Londo, especially after we saw War Without End, and there were some clues there that Sheridan in his little flash of the future would have saw. But JMS talked about this because this was a question that came up on the Usenets way back when, and made the comment about that Sheridan didn't fully understand what these were, and bear in mind that there's no reason to suspect anything in this situation. People can indeed start wars without having anything else going on. We do it all the time. He would have to have some overwhelming proof, or even if he says anything to Londo, he might risk changing the timeline based on what we saw in War Without End, so that there could potentially be disastrous consequences. So JMS kind of addressed the talking point around why didn't Sheridan or anybody on the council know about these, whatever was going on Centari Prime, and why they didn't bring it up. And basically the answer was they had no idea the two were connected. They wouldn't have had enough pieces to put it together. Alrighty then. So I think that leaves us the last little bit on this one, unless anyone else wants to talk about the Centari, is let's talk about Sheridan and Delenn and their interactions. And I'm sure Emily is going to have thoughts on Sheridan and his leadership skills and how smashing he looks in a robe. Nicole.
So I actually really enjoyed the very end when Sheridan kind of went off. I really thought when they were coming at Delenn and then people were defending her and everyone's arguing, he just goes off. And he's like, we tried to have peace. You don't want, basically was like, damn us all to hell. And I was like, oh, shit. And then when he goes, you want a war? You got a war. And I was like, oh, hell yeah. Shit's about to pop off. So I was like super hyped at that scene. I know some people don't like Sheridan. I don't mind Sheridan. I like him. But I really thought when push came to shove at the end of the episode, regardless of what happened beforehand, he fucking handled his business. And I feel like maybe that's kind of his character a little bit. He gets push. And when it comes down to it, he handles shit and takes care of it. Even if he's not maybe slow to get there or maybe not making the right choices or makes mistakes along the way. I think when push comes to shove, he always figures it out and gets shit done. So when he went off like that, I was like, yes, I was into it. So I really enjoyed his like speech at the end and him just basically going off because really they've been trying so hard to keep the peace, but these fucking alliance members nonstop bitching and wanting to argue and fight and like it really, I feel like all of this, like these council meetings we've witnessed have come to a head and everyone's screaming and arguing. He was like, enough, you know, it was like he used his dad voice times 10, you know, he was like, look here, you little shits. This is what's going to happen now. And I fucking loved it because I feel like someone needed to fucking step up and take that fucking bull by the horns because shit was getting out of control.
So, Nicole, does that mean when we start to get out of control on the podcast, someone should just scream enough and start in on a
and damn us all to hell? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can be that person.
Isn't that my job?
I mean,
I don't know.
We are all damned to hell. I think we know at this point.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Y'all never saw me lose my shit. Maybe it'll happen.
I was about to say, are we talking in terms of the podcast or the 20 years that we've known you? Because I beg to disagree if we're talking the 20 years.
Okay. Fair enough.
Jessi.
When you talk about Sheridan and Delenn, there's two different instances here that I think about. I think about the candle situation at the end, and then I think about him in the council. I do want to respond to the council meeting and him saying, you all wanted war, you know, you've got war. Well, what did you expect? They're losing their family, their friends, the people that they care about. They have somebody coming in and murdering their citizens, and nobody can tell them what it is or who it is. And so I get his, you guys didn't want peace. Well, no, listen, you killed my family. I don't want peace. I'm going to choose violence every fucking time. Like, Emily woke up today and she's a menace. I also am going to be a menace if you kill my entire family. So it's hard to watch Sheridan be this big Billy badass at the end of the situation, right before the war. Like, had you taken that stance from day one, maybe or maybe not. I don't know. I'm not good at the whole, if we did this, should we have done this? But like, it's hard to watch him try to be the leader that he should have been from the beginning at the end. And so, yes, these people, they want justice, and it's hard to have justice. Like, is just the, we've had this conversation on the pod before. Is there really ever justice? What's the definition of justice? Can you ever actually get justice? I don't know why Nicole's laughing at me. I don't know what I've done, but it's just hard. It's hard because these people want retribution. They want things to happen because their family members and their supplies and their world has been attacked. Their society has been attacked by some unknown entity. And all of a sudden we know this entity, and now you're screaming at them about, you wanted war, you got war. Well, the fuck? Like, I wanted war from day one. Why did we have to wait for fucking 8 episodes to get it? So,
Kevin.
I have 2 points. My first one is I feel like there's a huge plot hole here because it feels like all the tactician that Sheridan would have had to do here was plant some information and put a fleet of White Stars in several of these convoys or whatever so that they could catch the Centari red-handed. And end this fucking problem, and that would have been leadership. But what I saw in that scene where Sheridan yelled is two different things. First, there's the acting aspect, which I think Boxleitner's acting there is. But from the Sheridan character aspect, I don't think that's good leadership because he dresses them down and says they're ridiculous, and he boxed himself into promises that he doesn't want to keep, and he does anyway. And it doesn't strike me as good leadership.
Justin.
You're right. He definitely boxed himself in by the point that he went and snapped and had a bitch fit on everybody. He had no choice at that point to fucking declare war. He had made these promises. The entire alliance was screaming for war, so he's finally like, you know what? If you really want a war, then fine, we're going to go to war. Despite all of his best efforts to find a diplomatic situation, to try and maybe stall things, let Londo have some time to figure things out from Centauri Prime, all of that, it all went to waste because he saw the entire alliance disintegrating physically in front of him in that chamber room. And then he's like, you know what? Then screw it. If this is what you want, then this is what you get. And y'all going to have to deal with the consequences. We're going to go to war. Going with the whole Delenn and the candle thing, that was extremely profound about how Delenn speaks about how the flame reflects each life. Each flame is individual and unique and stuff like that. And the symbolism of the candle throughout the entire episode, I thought was actually really cool, where at the end, to me, the candle symbolized the hope for peace that eventually was melting down and eventually flamed out and fizzled away. And then now, at the end of the episode, when they're sitting down there together, the candle represents life in general and how that'll eventually burn down and fade away with every life that ends up being lost in this war. Was peace ever an option? Maybe Emily can answer next.
Peace was never an option.
Emily, you're going to choose violence, aren't you?
Maybe. Yeah, Sheridan's speech pissed me.
Yeah, imagine our shock.
I know. We're all shocked and amazed. Such a new feeling for me. What pissed me off about it was he's yelling about them like they wanted war. No, they did want peace, but they wanted their ships to not be attacked, and they're being attacked because there's still shadow minions on Centauri Prime fucking shit up. And they're not just going to sit by and be like, oh, shit, forever while our transports and all these people are blown up and killed. It wasn't their first choice. It was the result of the choices of whatever those creatures are fucking with people on Centari Prime. The minister, I mean, do we even know if the Regent's still alive? Because Londo never got to. So, I mean, from a viewer standpoint, we don't know who's actually in charge on Centari Prime anymore. Londo's been shut out. There's stuff going on he doesn't know about. He shows up on Centari Prime. He can't see the Regent. It's just this minister with a creepy-ass smile. Like, we don't know what the hell's going on with him, but he's doing some shit. So I thought Sheridan's little meltdown was a bit misplaced.
You were fucking up my predictions, a-hole.
Menace. Just
wow,
here to
Jessi.
it up. Yeah, Sheridan was absolutely having a little team with his one dick energy.
On that note, you're done. Nicole.
So this might be a hot take, but I thought the Alliance was doomed from the beginning because they all, from the very start of the Alliance, before the shipping bombings and all that shit started, they fucking bitched incessantly. All of the other worlds, okay? It was always something. It was always a conflict. It was always a problem. This one didn't want to do this. This one didn't want to sign that. This one didn't want to do this. From the start, they've been incessantly whining and bitching and complaining about every little fucking thing. And then the bombing started. And yes, Jessi, you have a point where you want justification for your families and stuff, but also this shit started way before that. That's why I was flailing, because all of this arguing, and all of this stuff started way before the shipping bombings and all that even began. From the very start, from the go, it was like fucking problem after problem after problem after problem. And even in that one episode, they were like, is this going to be good? They've even doubted it from the start. So I feel like, another hot take, I think Sheridan's rant was justified in a sense, because him and Delenn have been trying from the fucking go to make it a peaceful thing. They didn't want to fight. They wanted to support everyone. And not one fucking person or world would get on board with that. There was always someone with a conflict. And then it escalated. And then it escalated. And then the bombing started. And then it escalated. So now everyone's riled up and pissed. And he had a fucking enough. And you know what? I don't fucking blame him. Because if I was trying to manage that fucking alliance with all these little whiny bitches, there's no way in God's green earth I wouldn't have fucking freaked out like that too. And personal thoughts about Sheridan aside, as a human, there is no motherfucking way that I would have reacted any different in that moment, because just all of the stuff from the start to now, just, and then them acting like children and everyone's arguing and going after Delenn and fighting. Like, what else do you do in that moment besides scream and be like, shut the fuck up? So that might be a hot take for some of you, but that's how I feel about it, because I'll tell you what, I would have been throwing bows up in that bitch.
So, Nicole, were you a big fan of group projects in school?
I was, but I wasn't an asshole about it. I was the one that did all the fucking work.
So, Nicole, here's a question for you, because you said your hot take was that the Alliance was doomed to failure from the start. But we've seen Deconstruction of Falling Stars that goes to the future. So do you think the vignettes that we saw in Deconstruction of Falling Stars didn't actually happen, or that's one possible way to happen?
I mean, I don't really know. I just think that, like, I don't want to say it was from the start for the most part, but I feel like nobody was fully on board with it. I guess that's more of an accurate statement. It's like when you're trying to do something and make something happen, and then everyone has a problem. Well, you need to do this, or you need to change this, or I'm not going to do this unless you do this.
Jessi.
I think if he had come with that, like, dick energy from the beginning, you're not going to stop me. I know that you...
Snap.
And she's not realized it yet.
She has no idea she's muted.
Oh, man.
I hate you guys.
That was rough.
You cannot silence me.
I think I just proved I can.
I will find... We're not even editing this episode. So there's that. And Scott loves me, so I will get a hold of him personally and make sure that we don't do this. Don't make me pull the 6-titty episode, the 6-titty energy. Like, let's not, I'm kidding. Okay,
Scott's had a stroke. Let's not,
yeah, now is not.
That might be bad.
To be fair. Hi, Scott. Now is not the time.
I mean, you heard when I shared the clip in our group chat with, are those Jessie's boobs? What was the first thing that he responded to with
what about
boobs? Was boobs?
Listen, oh, God love him. God, that's my God. Okay, so but all jokes aside, we can start from here. If he had come from that energy from the beginning, maybe it would have been different. But it's like, okay, here's a hot take for you. I'm going to do this gentle parenting thing. No, thank you to hitting your mom in the face with your fist. No, thank you. I don't like it. And then the kid's 15 and beating his mom's ass. And then all of a sudden we're like, hey, why are we like this? Because we didn't do anything about it in the beginning. Okay, hot take. So listen, I'm not all for beating your children, but I feel like if you come out of the gate and set those expectations, there's a different result than allowing everybody to act like the big fucking babies that they've acted for multiple seasons. And then all of a sudden being like, okay, everybody, I've had enough. Dude, show your big fucking 6-dick energy from the beginning and we don't have to worry about this. So, and then when we get to the candle thing, I know Justin kind of talked about it a little bit, but I do have some comments on that. I don't think now's the time.
Emily.
Okay, so Nicole brought up all the bickering that happened when they were trying to negotiate peace, and I saw that as them wanting peace because they were actually at the table bringing up their concerns. Did it seem like nitpicking? Maybe, but that's how you get to peace. You have to work through conflicting wants and needs. So I just saw that as part of the regular problem, and if they didn't actually want the peace, they wouldn't be there at the table. They would be out shooting shit, blowing things up. So I still not a fan of his little tirade. It just, I get the frustration, but come on, dude. These people were actually like showing up. They were trying to figure out how to negotiate all these conflicting things. So yeah, it's frustrating because you can't just be like, oh, we've had all these problems, but now we're going to act happy when you have like, when there is going to be some level of conflict. You have to figure out how to work it out. I'm still going to be salty about his little like, temper tantrum explosion, whatever we want to call it.
Kevin.
Just because it's understandable doesn't mean it's good leadership.
Are you coming for me, Kevin? Because I'll come for you. I'm just kidding.
Usually you and I agree more, but not on this one, because his feelings are understandable, but what he said accomplished absolutely nothing. He completely capitulated, and there was no difference in what happened from what they wanted to what actually happened that he didn't like. So his leadership is crap in this episode, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I really like the discussion between him and Delenn, especially at the end of the episode. I think that was extremely profound, and I think it showed that he was not only a good husband, but he was very caring about what was going on. But in the moment, he had terrible leadership.
Nicole?
I just want to defend myself. I never said he had good leadership. I said I can understand why he fucking flipped out, and I enjoyed it. So, and I agree, he should have done that from the get-go. And, like, here's the thing. Sometimes you have to establish that authority from the beginning, or you're never going to get that respect. And I liken this to my childhood. My parents fucking told me who was boss, and I can promise you one thing. All they would have to do is look at me, and I'm like, okay. But you have to establish that, whether you're a parent or you're a leader or whatever you're doing. If you don't establish that leadership and that boundary from the get-go, then you're not going to have order or respect. So I do agree that he should have done that from the beginning. I was just saying I probably would have reacted the same way in that moment, because I feel that frustration that he had, like, him and Delenn just want things to be peaceful, and they don't want people to fight, and they are sick of war. And they just wanted to fucking fight. And I think that I understand where they were coming from.
Jessi.
Okay, I just need to establish that I do not advocate for beating your children. I don't even hit my dogs, so.
Well, if you did, you'd be a monster, and we know you're not one of those.
Yeah, no, I love dogs too much. Listen, like dogs more than most people.
I like my dogs better than most people also, so I get that.
So to talk about the candle speech, it was so soul-touching without being weird about it. Listening to them make the comment about, it's like when one goes out, there will never be another one just like it. That spoke to, like, the inner parts of my soul, because we've all lost people. And while you may have a billion other people in your life, there will never be that individual that died that is ever the same. And specifically, I don't mean to continue to bring up my dogs, but specifically, we lost one in January, and I have never been okay since. And it's like, what is it, August? And I can't imagine it being my mom or being somebody that was very, very close to me. I've been very lucky in my life to only lose normal people that you lose, like grandparents and, a limited amount of other people. But we've been having conversations about bringing another dog into the house. And immediately I was ready to take another dog in, and my husband wasn't, because everybody grieves differently. But recently we've gotten to the point where we're like, okay, maybe we're ready. It is just so hard when we're looking for those dogs to be like, I'm not trying to replace this guy, because there is no replacement. And so watching the episode, not to make it about me, but watching the episode was really, the very last part almost made me cry. And I think we've had this conversation on the podcast before about how I don't cry, and how I don't cry unless I'm like super, super pissed off. And this part of the episode almost got me in those, like, that one feel that I have left. It was a very, I don't know if profound's the right word, but it was a very touching speech. And watching the candle go out at the beginning and watching it, like, the whole episode happen and it come full circle at the end, it really, like, spoke to me in many different levels.
And we'll give the last word here to Justin, and then we will start in with our questions and predictions.
First off, cats rule, dogs drool.
Yes, she does. She's a beagle. She drools on fucking everything.
Just had to stand up being a proud cat dad. But that being said, the one thing that I think is the most profound about the entire candle scene is how, I guess what Delenn said is almost a perfect analogy for life. And it's watching the episode twice, kind of put it a little bit in my brain. But honestly, what developed it more was just watching and hearing everybody's kind of discussion about it today, because it just demonstrates how fragile life is. How easily can a candle be snuffed out by the slightest breeze of a wind? And I guess that just kind of shows how easy one little trick of fate, one little sidestep, one little maneuver can make the difference between life and death. And it could come at any time from a high political level down to, you know what, you turned right instead of left on the sidewalk. It's how fragile we all are, how fragile, and yeah, none of us can ever be replaced. And the fact that decisions are made that will affect millions of lives, and it's not only in Babylon 5, it's anywhere. Throw a dart at the map of our flat Earth, and you will you'll find a spot where decisions are being made that affects thousands and millions of lives. And it's honestly, I think probably for the rest of my life, I'll carry forward the analogy of life being like a candle. It was that profound.
Right, I think that wraps up our discussion for And All My Dreams Torn Asunder. We do want to get to our questions and predictions. For those new to the show, we give all of our newbies a chance to ask us their questions, make their predictions about where the series is headed. We've had a lot of fun with this segment. We've gaslighted the hell out of a few of them. All I have to say, if anyone really wants some fun, go back and reference any episode where we talk about angel wings. And Justin,
You're welcome.
I am convinced that when he goes back after this ends and listens to some Beyond the Rims, 20 years of friendship is going to be ruined for some of us because he's going to be fucking pissed as hell at us.
Or I'll just laugh as hell. I'll just laugh out along with all the rest of you. Fuck it.
No, you set that standard from the beginning, Justin. Fuck you guys and fucking after the rim.
Fuck the rim. Fuck the rim.
Damn, fuck the rim.
You rim jobbers, you don't need to do anything like that.
Like, for what it's worth, I don't even like doing it. So.
All right, so let's go to Emily first for questions and predictions.
My first question is, does Sheridan actually show any growth between now and the end of the season? Because I feel like we've seen Jakar grow. Londo still fucks up, but there is growth there. Lanier has changed. Garibaldi, obviously slipping back. Franklin seems to have grown, and Sheridan just still seems stuck as this bumbling annoyance who now has bad dye job. And then, so I have a question about Londo and Jakar being in the cell together. Are we assuming they're being fed and watered? Okay, but I do have questions about they're obviously trying to keep Londo from finding out anything or contacting anyone. So are they actually going to try to starve him to death, or will they be fed? Because I'm assuming the minister's not going to share that he has them holed up in a cell.
Nicole, questions and predictions.
My brain is broken.
Amen.
I think I asked questions throughout the episode like an asshole, so I really don't have a lot of questions. Like, my main questions were, what's the candle significance? And then she said that at the end. And then, was Zach an alcoholic? Which, we kind of answered. So I really don't have any questions, I don't think, because they've all pretty much been answered. But I guess if I had to make a prediction, that I think that Jakar and Londo are going to be stuck in that prison until whenever this shenanigans end. I don't think they're getting out. I don't think anyone's going to save them. I don't think that... I think they're fucked, basically, until...
Justin, questions and predictions.
No, so the first question I had is, was that a cricket outside of Londo Jakar's cell? Second question I had was, is this really the last time that Londo will be on B5? Does Jakar ever come back? Second question, is this where Londo will be forced to take his keeper as a part of his trying to be released, so that all will be eventually revealed and he can get to the bottom of what's going on? Is this how he ends up taking a keeper? Question number, whatever. Will everyone find out the truth about what Garibaldi did? And is this what causes everything shit to hit the fan with Garibaldi? So those are my questions. Prediction number one. I think this war is going to be short. I think the combined might of the White Star Fleet and the Alliance fleets will make short work of the Centari ships. I think this is going to be a very, very short war. They'll be home by Christmas, because that's what we're always told. And then the last prediction I have, it's kind of more of a hope. I hope Garibaldi gets yanked out of his job sooner rather than later before he fucks anything else up. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
And Jessi.
Oh, you're finally giving me a chance. Okay, here we go. Ready? Let me get my notepad out. Ready? Number 1. So the noise out the cell. Was that a cricket? Number 2. Do we get to see Lockley again? Because I have not seen her for most of the season. And number 3, said cricket outside of the cell, was that placed by Justin? Inquiring minds would like to know. Okay, my predictions are, somebody touched on it earlier, and I think it was Emily maybe. I told him shut up. The Regent is dead or totally incapacitated. The Minister is calling all of the shots. And 3, this information will come to light, and the Regent's head is going to end up on a stake somewhere.
Justin?
I have actually one legitimate question. Where's Earth in all this? Earth is supposed to be part of the Alliance. Why isn't Earth involved really in anything regarding to said alliance? That's one thing that I've wondered for a couple episodes now is you see all the other races represented. I understand Sheridan is probably the representative for Earth since he's from that planet. But in terms of now we're going to be escalating, the alliance is going to be at full-out war against one of its former member states.
Okay. That concludes our questions and predictions from all of our newbies. But before we throw all these sons of bitches and fuckers out the goddamn airlock, we have our Conspiracy Minute with Jessi, and I'm sure she has a conspiracy for us this evening.
I do. Okay, there's 3 today. One of them is we are blessed to have it from Justin. So the government uses GPS to take images of your head, and then they also, in return, use radio, like microwaves, to monitor the thoughts in your head. So to mitigate this, people, to resolve the government mind reading you, you just have to relax your mind. You're all welcome. The next one is there is a targeted effort by the first ones to stop the noobs from talking about Londo's dicks. I've had enough. The third one is allegedly there are people in this world that exist who have never had a fast food hamburger, and one of them allegedly may be on our podcast. You're welcome to my conspiracy theories.
So to address Jessi's conspiracy theories, the first one I know isn't true because here's the thing. If there were people from the government listening in on people's thoughts, just the 7 people on this podcast could fuck somebody up so much that I can only imagine if you extrapolated that out to the entire population, there is no one sane enough for that job to actually do it.
Oh no, it's like the mind mosquitoes from Futurama. This guy sure loves porn.
And your second one is absolutely true.
Well, I know it is. God damn it, we had a whole segment last time about Londo dicks. This time I've been muted, people. Scott, don't you fucking dare edit that out. I've been censored and I don't like it. I amuse myself. I don't care what you guys think.
So now it is time to get rid of our newbies so that we can talk about all of their questions and predictions and question our life choices for even doing this podcast. We look forward to seeing some of our listeners again next week, because God knows how some of you keep sticking with us after this week to week, where we will discuss movements of fire and shadow.
And is it a cricket?
And there will be no crickets. I have been Blake, and with me has been the following group of assholes.
I'm one of the biggest assholes, Jessi.
Blake?
I'd like to say I'm like a kitten, Nicole.
I've got 6 dick energy, and I'm Justin.
Okay, that broke me. I'm Kevin.
And I am the very demure Emily.
Demure. Very.
Oh, fuck that
Very
phrase.
demure.
So over that phrase.
She's just so sweet and innocent.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, there was something in the air there.
Oh, God damn.
Oh my God, we're gonna have to set up a Deadpool within the podcast. Who's the next one of us that's gonna have to check out?
Blake all day long listening. It is fucking Blake. Blake has muted me today.
Anyone who hosts.
For the first time in 4.5 seasons.
Took you long enough.
Oh.
Woo. That's why Scott says he had the stroke while playing Animal Crossing. I'm convinced it was listening to us.
No, Tom Nook is an asshole.
He didn't want to have to give it up for permanently, so he blamed it on Animal Crossing.
Thank you for listening to Gray 17, a Babylon 5 podcast. You can find all the places to listen to and watch this podcast at anchor.fm/Gray17podcast or youtube.com/Gray17podcast. We want to hear from you, so join the conversation at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or Patreon. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review where you are listening to or watching this podcast. Gray 17 is not affiliated with, and the podcast has not been prepared, approved, or licensed by Warner Brothers or any other owners of the Babylon 5 copyright. All clips included in this podcast are the intellectual property of the respective copyright holders. They are included here for purpose of review, and no infringement is intended. The opening and closing themes are available from Falling Matter on YouTube.
And what's out there?
At the rim?
And beyond that?
The truth.
Welcome back, everybody, to Beyond the Rim, where us first ones are now going to go over all of the questions and predictions. Well, at least the serious questions and predictions that our newbies had.
And let me begin by saying I'm sorry.
Don't ever apologize. No, we don't do that here. So, for our first question, does Sheridan show any growth between now and the end of the season? I think yes, but that's based mostly on Sleeping in the Light.
Yeah, I mean, this rewatch has definitely caused me to have different feelings about the Sheridan character. I thought he was really good through the first 3 or 4 seasons, and then I just don't feel like the character has done very well in this season. It's unfortunate because I really like the actor, I really like the character, but it's definitely laid bare his not only his leadership problems but also his diplomatic shortcomings.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think Sheridan is definitely more of the Bridge of a Starship character than the diplomat president they've made him into for this.
Yeah, but I mean, he's not even a Picard. He's not even a Cisco. Like, he's worse than Janeway.
Well, those shows had bigger budgets.
Yeah, well, true, but I mean, I don't want to get into a Star Trek thing here, but he's definitely not anywhere close to a Picard.
No.
Yeah, and for being like, I don't know, you kind of as the captain and coming from like the Star Trek kind of background, like you want to assert that he's like the main character above all else, but he's really not. It's an ensemble show, and even among the other main characters in the ensemble, I really kind of do think Sheridan doesn't really show a lot of growth from the day that we meet him till the end. I mean, he's kind of the same guy he always was, in my mind.
I don't know. I think he was really good in the Severed Dreams storyline. I thought his character did really well throughout that whole problem, and even the Shadow War stuff, I thought he was pretty good. There was more stuff going on there that was, for lack of a better term, problematic, but certainly season 3 with Severed Dreams, I thought he was solid. But
I mean, I guess I would just say, though, that he's always been kind of more, to your point, less of a Picard and more of a balls and bayonets kind of character. I mean, he's definitely a little bit more thoughtful than like the guy that started the Minbari War.
Right.
But I will say, too, I think part of it is there were so many messianic tendencies written around Sheridan. And we even commented it early on. There were the messianic pieces written around Sheridan. And you had that with Cisco to an extent as the emissary in DS9. But they had 7 seasons where they developed that really towards season 6, 7 in the Dominion War. To where the early seasons, yes, the Bajorans looked at him as emissary, but he fought it. He didn't embrace it. And I think part of the writing here is you almost had that messianic buildup around Sheridan, but you didn't have the slow play out or the setup for it like they did with DS9. Yeah. And I think that's part of the issue some of us have with Sheridan right now.
That's a good way to put it.
So next question, are we assuming that Londo and Jakar are being fed?
And that goes part and parcel to the next question. To what degree are the Centari willing to go to keep Londo from learning the rest of it? So I think Emily's question was, is there an active, ready to go, are they willing to sacrifice Londo to keep him from knowing what's going on?
I don't think so, because I think they want Londo as part of their plan at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And they only threw Londo in there because he refused to leave Jakar.
Right. But, they keep him completely out of it, so they obviously do not trust him. And they obviously do not think that he would have gone along with it, which I'm sure is true. And the only reason that he ends up really becoming part of it is because he has no choice in taking a keeper, which really gets to some of the question up here is this what leads to Londo getting his keeper? Not
really.
Directly, no, but the storyline's so close that it's related slightly, but not really completely at all.
And I do think that it again is a matter of timing. I think Londo is essential to their plan. It's just not the time they need him, so that's why they're keeping him in the dark.
Right.
Will this be the last time that Londo will be on B5? I honestly don't remember if Londo actually returns to Babylon 5.
I was hoping you knew the answer.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't know off the top of my head know if he actually, because there's only 5 episodes left because he's deceased by sleeping in the light. I don't think he does. Yeah, I don't think we have quite the answer there, but I'm not certain.
Hold on, I'm almost there. I don't think he goes back after this.
Yeah, I don't think so either. It's not long before, we have the fall of Centari Prime and Londo getting his keeper, and he doesn't go back after that, certainly.
I don't think he goes back after this. I think this is it. So, I don't want to say definitively. I know the listeners will answer us if we get it wrong, but my guess is he does not go back to Babylon 5 after his return to Centari Prime in this episode, but we could be wrong. But that's another reason why I felt like this just was a flash of old Londo, just because I think it's the last time we see him on Babylon 5.
I'm scrolling through one last little thing real quick to see. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything where... I thought maybe there was like a quick thing, but yeah, I'm not seeing anywhere where he...
Well, and the fact that he was like, don't worry, Vera, I'll be right back. It's like, I don't think you will, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at that point, at any point in the future, he'd be Emperor, and I don't think the Emperor shows up again at B5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Big enough deal when the last Emperor showed up, and then things didn't end well for that. With regard to Garibaldi, will everyone find out what culpability he had in the war and his fuck-up in this episode?
Yes.
Yes.
Next question.
Yes, it becomes a whole thing. Yes, correct. Will we see Lockley again? Yes, we will. Although it definitely is striking when you do this week to week how little you see Lockley in season 5.
And if you really want to know our thoughts on that, go listen to last week's episode with Beyond the Rim. We talk about it quite a bit.
Yes. And where is Earth in all this conflict?
They're in line at Starbucks.
Yeah, why do they not seem to be involved? Well, because the Interstellar Alliance seems to have made Earth kind of irrelevant for whatever reason.
Well, we'll get to this in a couple episodes, too. I mean, keep in mind with Earth also, one, technologically, they're not on par with some of these other races as far as their ships go.
Yeah.
Two, they just had a civil war where a good chunk of their fleet kicked the ass of the other good-sized chunk of their fleet.
Yeah.
So they're down a lot of ships. It's actually going to come up. The Interstellar Alliance is working with Earth to build a new type of destroyer, which is what we will see in A Call to Arms and Crusade as the Excalibur and the Victory.
So moving on to predictions, Jakar and Londo will be stuck in that cell for quite a while until this conflict is over.
Nope.
And yeah, no, not so much.
And this will also get to, are they being fed? Because they are, and Jakar creates a reaction to the food that causes Londo to vacate the cell. Let's put it that way.
This war will be short. The White Star Fleet and whatnot will make quick work of the war effort.
Yep.
Garibaldi will be removed from his position.
Yep.
The regent is actually dead, and the minister is the one calling the shots. Well,
nope.
No, the regent is not dead, but the Drak in some way are the ones calling the shots.
And the minister's just a lackey.
Yes. And the minister's head will end up on a pike.
That's possible.
I don't know for sure, but fairly likely.
Because at the end of it, Londo does blame the Emperor and a rogue and basically conducting it as a secret operation. He throws not the Emperor, he blames the Regent
Right.
He throws the Regent under the bus, and I'm willing to bet the minister might have went with him.
I'm guessing he did too.
All right. I think that covers our questions and predictions. Do either of you have anything else you want to cover this evening?
No.
Nope, nothing here.
All right. With that, I am Blake, and with me has been
Mike
and Kevin.
Make sure to check us out again next week as we get into movements of Fire and Shadow, as we keep rounding out the end of season 5 of the Great Babylon 5.
Wait, do you guys want to hear a weird thing? I've never had a hamburger from a fast food place ever.
What?
Like not McDonald's or anything?
Never.
Wendy's?
Never. Just chicken nuggets or chicken tenders or chicken sandwiches.
Wow.